It is now 8:30. Good Friday morning. This is the Community Voice program, Newstalk 1330, FM 106.3, streaming live online at newstalk1330.com. And I'm Colin Worthington. Our guest this morning is on the Carroll County School Board, representing District 6, mostly out of Bowden. I believe there's a little bit of Mount Zion in that district as well. Bart Cater has been the Board of Education representative for, it'll be 20 years in this December. And he's not often challenged, but this year he does have a challenger in the election. Early voting already going on now. But David Smith has challenged Bart Cater in this race. And we talked to David a few weeks back. So if you want to go back and dig up that program, it's posted on our website, newstalk1330.com, in the podcast section. You can look in the archives and find that program. This morning, though, we are going to talk with Bart Cater. And again, Carroll County Board of Education representing District 6. Bart, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Worthington. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I hope you are too. I did want to, when I was introducing you, I was thinking about, I want to introduce him as, he's an engineer and works for Georgia Power, but also maybe less renowned, he's a photographer. And I see your pictures all the time, and you've actually given me pictures over the years that you've taken, and a real good photographer.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah, I know. I'm pretty swell. Well, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this race a little bit, Bart. 20 years. I believe all your kids are out of high school. Why would you want to be on there for 4 more years?
Well, the reason I'd want to be on there for 4 more years is there a few things that I would like to still focus on going forward. One would be, for instance, back in around 2013, our graduation rate was at 77%, say at Bowden High School as an example. And we're over 90% for the last 2 years. But we talked about this in the board of, well, what are we going to do about the remaining 10%? So I want to be there to help with the experience that I've had, to help the board drill down on how do we access that last 10% and get them to graduation, to get them the best start in life that they could possibly have. The other reason that I want to do 4 more years is the Bowden High School project, excuse me, and the next SPLOST referendum. If the next SPLOST is passed, then there is a project that the board has talked about for the last 2 to 3 years. And again, all this is dependent upon final approval of the board. But it's not a facade. A facade implies just improving the face of what you see from the street. This project is budgeted for $7 to $8 million, and it will literally tear down most of that front hall of the high school, including the library. And most of that school is built in the 1950s. It still has the old steam pipes in the floor, which buckles the tile from time to time. A lot of maintenance issues with that. And this is just consistent with what we have done as a school system at all of our high schools and all of our schools is to try to improve those facilities through the SPLOST money that's raised through the 1 cent sales tax. So it's a lot more than a facade improvement. It's a infrastructure improvement, and it also includes some renovation of the back hall. It also includes expansion of the band room and renovation of it, which is, part of our fine arts program. So it's a very big thing that I have been trying to support and get ready to be done when the next SPLOST comes along, and I want to be there to try to help get that across the finish line.
A couple things I want to touch on that you'd mentioned. I guess, first of all, the e-SPLOST is being voted on right now in the same election, same ballot as this race, Carroll County Board of Education race, so voters will decide on that this go-around. You'd mentioned a couple of things. I took some notes from my interview with David Smith, who was your challenger when we interviewed him last month, and you touched on some things that he said. Here's a quote from him. Being a good steward of money, I'm not so sure Bowden High School needs a new facade to look like the old college, and you kind of touched on that and elaborated on that. But he says, when kids have a problem with vermin infestation, I think we have better things to look at than the outside of the school. Is that a good use of money, and is there a problem at Bowden High School with vermin?
I have not been made aware of problems, but you can almost guarantee we have infestations in our own house sometimes from time to time, and you address those through our maintenance and operations department. And an old building like that probably does. New building can, have that. So what I would say to that is that, yes, that is something that probably is an issue from time to time. I'm not aware of a major issue in that area, but that's something that should be addressed through our maintenance and operations department. And the key point there is SPLOST money cannot be used to pay for maintenance and operations or salaries in our system. The Constitution of Georgia says that the purpose of local option sales tax like that is for capital outlay projects for educational purposes or the retirement, of general obligation debt from previous SPLOST. So it's pretty specific that SPLOST money is to be used for new capital outlay projects, which is what this is at Bowden and is what is consistent with what we've done at every other high school.
I don't know that this is in the plans as far as that project for Bowden High School, but were you in favor of bonding that money, getting the money ahead of time before it's even collected, but then having to pay interest on it later?
Well, that's something that the board has, routinely done in the past. My conservative nature says, no, you shouldn't do that. But then there's a balance between, do you want to wait for every project? But some projects are like $8 million, for instance. We take in around $1.2 million per month on a SPLOST. So you can do the math. It would take, 6 months to a year. But if you've got multiple projects at that amount, then it really puts a logjam in being able to complete projects that would benefit our students. The other point is that when we spend that money, it gets put back into our community because we're hiring, for the most part, local companies. Their families live here, they work here, their kids go to school here. So it's really just continuing to turn over that money and move it around. So yes, there is a cost to that, and I'm generally opposed to that, but I'm okay with it in this instant. The one time that I was very adamant against it was when it was proposed to the board to do a 10-year bond, because the SPLOST referendum is only approved for 5 years. The voters allow us to collect money for a 5-year period. And I felt like when the board was proposed to us to borrow money for a 10-year bond, then we were obligating the taxpayers to approve the next SPLOST whether they wanted it or not. And so in that case, I was very publicly vocal against it. So I guess it's situational dependent, but at the end of the day, we're doing things to help support our children and get them the best education they can get.
Bart Cater, our guest on this morning's Community Voice program, longtime board member for the Carroll County School District. Before I go to our first break, give me a perspective on something the district's done well over the last 5 years, and it may be something that they could have done better, or maybe if you had the opportunity, you'd do different.
Excuse me. Well,
I've got that too right now, unfortunately.
I'm sorry?
I said I've got that too right now, the pollen. I've got that issue right now too.
Yeah, I apologize. So the first thing that came to my mind when you said, what have we done, really well, and what are something that we could do better, is I feel like the school system, I don't feel like I know. The school system has put a huge emphasis on safety and security, especially over the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, I want to run down the list real quick with you. Each school has a safety team that oversees the implementation of a school safety plan that they develop with the staff and the administration. There's a district-level safety team that works with all of the school-level safety teams to develop those plans. We have safety summits every summer where those safety teams meet with the local law enforcement and fire emergency management folks to develop a comprehensive plan for the whole county. And that's something that most people don't realize, but Sheriff Langley funds most of that money to put on that safety summit. So there's just a huge partnership between multiple agencies around safety. We have added entrance containment systems at all of our schools where people have to show credentials to be buzzed into the building via a camera and a buzz system. And then we spent $1.3 million on high-definition security cameras to be able to monitor our schools. We installed something called a shield system in 7 of our schools, and that allows instant communication with 911. You push a button, and everybody comes running to the school. We provide active shooter drills every year to practice, for unfortunately, the situation that we never want to happen. We have, a couple of years ago, we partnered and asked the Georgia Emergency Management Agency to come in, and they came in and conducted a site survey of every campus in the Carroll County school system. And they reviewed the safety plan, they conducted interviews with the safety teams, they assessed the current state of the district's security procedures and processes, and we learned a tremendous amount from those folks. And then the last thing that we've done recently was called the Centegix Crisis Alert System. Every school has a system now where the teachers can push a button on a lanyard and instantly notify administration, 911, and the central office staff of anything, whether it's a classroom disruption, an intruder in the building. So we have multiple layers of safety that we don't want to tell everybody the details of that, but we have focused so much on safety lately. And the other part is we have resource officers. We have 12 in the system, and I admit we don't have one at Bowden. But part of the reason we don't have one is not because we haven't approached the situation. There's a combination of factors of why we don't have one. But one is because what we do is we share in the cost of those officers. We pay half, and the local police jurisdiction pays half. And for right now, the city of Bowden has declined to pay half. And I've spoken to Sheriff Langley 2 times this week, and we've talked about that and what we could do to possibly improve that. So that's an area that we can improve, but I don't think that negates all of the other positive things that we are doing with safety. So that's the first thing that came to my mind with that question.
Time right now is 8:42. Talking about security leads me into thinking about Douglas County School System recently opened up a police department for the school system. They've hired a police chief. Is that something that Carroll County Schools is anywhere in need of?
I don't know if we're in need of it, but that is something that we have not discussed as a board. I'm not opposed to that, and maybe that's something we need to look at and research and see if that makes good sense for us, or are we doing good with the partnerships that we have with the local agencies. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I'd love to have a resource officer in every school. I'd love to have a nurse in every school. I'd love to have more counselors, all those things that we need. But it boils down to, and it's something we can probably talk about in a little bit, is with this pandemic thing, if we have to cut 14% out of our budget, then we're probably going to be faced with some tough decisions.
Let me, we'll touch that on the budget after this break. Bart Cater, our guest on this morning's Community Voice program, longtime member of the Board of Education, Carroll County Schools District. Time right now is 8:44. We'll take our first break, come back and talk more with Bart Cater, Community Voice, brought to you by Tanner Health System, Oak Mountain Academy, on Newstalk 1330 FM 106.3.
As we journey through this global pandemic together, Oak Mountain Academy is lifting everyone in prayer and holding the community in our hearts. We continue to pray for all of the families directly impacted and the first responders and medical personnel on the front lines. There are so many individuals working around the clock to keep us safe and healthy. I'm Patrick Uran, headmaster, asking you to join all of us on the mountain in prayer and gratitude for everyone in our community. For more information about the Academy, visit us at oakmountain.us.
For more than 70 years, you have turned to Tanner Health System for your healthcare needs. As our community moves forward, Tanner is here for you. Strong, safe, and close to home. Routine medical appointments, urgent elective surgeries, and imaging are back on the calendar at our hospitals and Tanner Medical Group practices. With the safety of our patients, staff, and community always our top priority. Learn more at tanner.org. Hashtag We Are Tanner Strong. That's tanner.org. Hashtag We Are Tanner Strong.
8:45 exactly. Community Voice program, Newstalk 1330, FM 106.3, streaming live online at newstalk1330.com. I'm your host this morning, Colin Worthington. Our guest is Bart Cater, longtime Carroll County School Board member representing District 6, again, which is the mostly Bowden. What are the boundaries for District 6, Bart?
Well, excuse me, the Bowden District basically is all of southwestern Carroll County. It goes over to Love's Store at Tice Crossroads, basically, and then it goes up into Mount Zion, actually, and it goes all the way up to Highway 16. So if people know where the old elementary school was in Mount Zion, the little community gymnasium across the street's actually in the Bowden voting district, and that's because of the Voter Rights Act that you have to have equal representation. So the attendance lines for schools don't always match up with the voter lines.
Mm-hmm. All right, Bart Cater, our guest on this morning's Community Voice program. We did kind of suggest we talk about the budget a little bit this segment. And he did mention 14% is what the state has predicted. Well, they said prepare for 14%. It could be a little more. It could be even less, 14% less to come out of the QBE money that each school district gets. What's the process? What steps is the board taking right now to prepare for that?
Well, right now, Mr. Cowart, superintendent, and our Chief Financial Officer, Delene Strickland, are closely monitoring what's coming out of the state. And we're really just trying to look at worst-case scenarios and be prepared for anything, to be quite honest with you. But it was presented to us the other night that an estimated budget deficit could be right at almost $12 million if that 14% reduction comes into effect.
How are you going to decide on whether to support millage rate increase if maybe the financial officer suggests it would be beneficial to the district?
Well, for me personally, I think, when I don't think I know, I would want to make sure that we exhaust every other avenue or at least have a very big balance and skew that balance towards things like we're estimated to receive $3.7 million from the federal funds CARES Act that was recently passed. And also we're looking at all positions that are not filling them or filling them through other people in our county, so you get a net reduction in salaries that way. We're also looking possibly at using some of our reserve money. We hold money in reserve because every November time frame, the way the cash flow works, the school system gets really close to not having enough money to make payroll until the property taxes start coming in December. So the state law in the Georgia allows school systems to hold money in reserve to be able to satisfy that cash flow. But we have some wiggle room in that to possibly offset some of this reduction. But the problem with that is that could be like a one-time thing, and hopefully next year we wouldn't be faced with that. And, we've been through furlough days before, which I'm not in favor of that if we can do it some other way. One thing that, a lot of folks may not realize is on the millage rate, we're only allowed to collect a maximum of 20 mills of tax. And right now we're at 17.998, so basically 18 mills. But out of our millage rate, we have to give the first 5 mills of tax that we collect back to the state so it can be redistributed out to other systems in the state of lower wealth, so to speak. And so that's 5 mills on a 20 mil maximum is 25% of the taxes we take in really gets redistributed. And we get some of that back, but we don't get near about all of it.
Bart Cater, our guest on this morning's Community Voice program. He's being challenged this year for his seat on the Carroll County Board of Education, District 6. David Smith is the challenger. We interviewed Smith about a month or so back, and that interview is now posted on our website, newstalk1330.com. In the podcast section, go to the archive portion and dig through there, and you'll be able to find that and compare the candidates if you have not already gone out to vote, because early voting is going on today. It'll go on all next week and the week after, and I believe the final Saturday before Election Day there'll be advanced voting opportunity on that Saturday. Again, Bart Cater is our guest on this morning's Community Voice program. Should the Carroll County Board of Education have the opportunity to select a new superintendent, in the next 4 years if you were to win and that opportunity came up? What are some questions that you would ask a candidate to before deciding if you would support them to be the next superintendent?
Well, let me first say this. Over the 20 years, I have the benefit of being on the board working with three superintendents. And the last two, Mr. Zahner and Mr. Cowart, have been great for our system. Their longevity, because when I first got on the board, superintendents were coming and going every 18 months to 2 years, and the board had a really bad, I guess, reputation, if you will, in the public of not working together. So one of the things that I would want to make sure is that person has the ability to work with the team of our governance team of board members and the staff at the central office and work as a team. I would want someone that has previous experience in planning, operating, and assessing a large, complex system such as ours. I mean, the educational system is very complex with the way it's funded from the federal, the state, and local levels, all the rules. Every time you get federal money, there's rules attached to it. And we just need someone that has a lot of experience in that area. I want someone that will continue to expand on the community partnerships that we've worked hard for over the years. I mean, Carroll County has been nationally recognized for its 12 for Life partnership with Southwire Company. We also have the Southwire Engineering Academy that we partner with Southwire with. We're the only system in the state of Georgia that has two college and career academies. We have one up at the north end at Billerica and one on the south end. And we made a commitment as a board to support that education because we want to provide multiple pathways for children to get a successful start. I'd also want to make sure that person is able to work with staff, and what I mean by that is treat them with respect and actively engage everyone from the teacher in the classroom to the assistant superintendent on how to improve our school system. Because if it's us against them mentality in our system, we will fail, and we have got to work together as a team. And I've also realized over the years that someone might interview well, but then they might not perform well. And I want to make sure that we ask the right questions to see that it's a genuine person that knows how to do it, and will put Carroll County students first.
And let me end that with him. Cowart has not suggested he's going to not hope to continue as superintendent or anything like that. It's just, he's been there for a while. I think it's a question that, something could happen in the next 4 years, so I put that question out to all the candidates. Time right now is 8:53. We're going to take our final break and come back and wrap up our conversation with Bart Cater on the Community Voice program, Newstalk 1330, FM 106.3, streaming live online at newstalk1330.com.
For more than 70 years, you have turned to Tanner Health System for your healthcare needs. As our community moves forward, Tanner is here for you. Strong, safe, and close to home. Routine medical appointments, urgent elective surgeries, and imaging are back on the calendar at our hospitals and Tanner Medical Group practices. With the safety of our patients, staff, and community always our top priority. Learn more at tanner.org. #WeAreTannerStrong. That's tanner.org. #WeAreTannerStrong.
As we journey through this global pandemic together, Oak Mountain Academy is lifting everyone in prayer and holding the community in our hearts. We continue to pray for all of the families directly impacted and the first responders and medical personnel on the front lines. There are so many individuals working around the clock to keep us safe and healthy. I'm Patrick Uran, headmaster, asking you to join all of us on the mountain in prayer and gratitude for everyone in our community. For more information about the Academy, visit us at oakmountain.us.
8:55 Community Voice, brought to you by Tanner Health System, Oak Mountain Academy, Newstalk 1330 FM 106.3. I'm Colin Worthington, wrapping up our conversation with Carroll County School Board member Bart Cater. Bart, what do you think the public expects of a board member, and do you think, do they expect more than what a board member really can get his hands on?
Well, I think sometimes the way the law is set up, Colin, is that the board is elected and the superintendent is hired or appointed by the board. And the way the law is very specific about this is that the board members, number one, don't have any authority outside of being inside a called board meeting. And we also, our main function is to implement policy and approve a budget that is presented by the superintendent. And we also are the person that says yes or no to his recommendations on personnel issues. So we have a very defined role, and the defined role of the superintendent is to be the person that runs the day-to-day operations. So when people come to me with issues, I try to respect the chain of command, and I try my best to make sure that the system, in other words, the people at the central office or the principals in the school building, have the opportunity to address issues that really are day-to-day things. But I'm very fully willing to accept the responsibility of asking the board to address things if the system is not able to bring that to a resolution. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how I see the board and the role.
Got about 2 minutes left in the program. Actually, I'll give you an entire 2 minutes. Haven't had the opportunity to walk out on the street and talk to constituents over the last couple months for you, unfortunately, I'm sure. But somebody does come up to you and says, "Hey, Bart, I've got 2 candidates. Why should I punch your name on the at the polling place this time?"
Well, first of all, Colin, thank you for allowing, and to Steve Graddick for allowing me the opportunity to be on the Community Voice this morning. I will say this, that the system has given much to me over the years. I graduated from Bowden in 1985. My parents went there. My children, everyone. For example, my children benefited from people I have lived around all my life. I think about people like Laura Messer and Paula Wilson-Steed, who gave my kids a great start. I think about Sylvia Caldwell at the middle school that gave them a great push. And then I think about people like Carrie Gay and Mark Huggins and Kim Whitman and all those people that helped me personally and my family. So I feel like it's an honor that the community has accepted me to be their representative over these 20 years, and I hope they give me the opportunity again, but I do respect the democratic process. But look, I did not get into this 20 years ago for anything other than to give back to the community that has given so much to me. And I promise that I will continue to do the very best I can. And trust me, it's not for the money. I do it because I want to, and I do it because I want to do my part. I don't do everything right, but I do everything as hard as I know how. And, the Lord willing, what will happen, and I will be satisfied either way.
Bart Cater, our guest on this morning's Community Voice program. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you giving us time this morning. And,
thanks, sir.
Bart is the incumbent board member representing District 6 on the Carroll County School Board. Time right now is 8:59. I want to remind you that early voting is going on right now, so you can go, if you live in the Bowden area, you can go vote on that race and all the other races that are on the ballot, of course. Election day is the 9th, June the 9th, so still got a little bit of time to do that and do your research and make your judgment on the candidate for the particular races that will be on your ballot.